The alarm screamed through the bridge of the ESS horizon as Captain Lee Minho gripped the arms of his command chair. The stars outside twisted into impossible shapes, colors that shouldn't exist bleeding across the viewscreen. His crew held their positions, fear evident on their faces but discipline keeping them steady. "Report," Minho commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Dr. Park Ji-young looked up from her station, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of terror and excitement. "We've successfully created a stable wormhole, Captain. But we're not where we expected to be." Commander Kwon Dae-hyun studied his tactical display with a frown. "Sir, I'm detecting 17 vessels surrounding us. Their technology is unlike anything in our databases." Before Minho could respond, the communications console erupted with sound. It wasn't language, not exactly. It was a symphony of tones, clicks, and harmonics that made his teeth ache. Ji-young immediately began working, her fingers flying across her console as translation algorithms struggled to process the transmission. "They're trying to communicate," she said. "Give me a moment." The moment stretched into 5 tense minutes. The alien vessels maintained their positions, neither approaching nor retreating. Minho studied them through the viewscreen. They were beautiful in a way that human ships weren't. Organic curves met geometric precision. Some seemed to shimmer as if not entirely present in normal space. "Got it," Ji-young announced, patching through. The voice that came through the speakers was melodious, almost musical. "Unknown vessel, you have violated the sovereign space of the Galactic Concordat. Explain your presence immediately or face interdiction protocols." Minho straightened in his chair. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. First contact with alien intelligence. He activated his microphone. "This is Captain Lee Minho of the Earth Starship Horizon, representing the United Earth Federation. We come in peace. Our arrival here was unintentional. We were testing a new form of faster-than-light travel." There was a long pause. When the voice returned, it carried a note of confusion. "You claim to have achieved faster-than-light travel? Through what method?" Ji-young looked at Minho, uncertainty in her eyes. He nodded for her to respond. "We utilized an experimental wormhole drive," she explained, "by creating a controlled tear in space-time and—" "Impossible," the voice interrupted. "Wormhole generation requires dimensional anchors placed across multiple reference points. No species can create spontaneous wormhole passages. The mathematics alone would require computational power that—" "We did it anyway," Chief Engineer Choi Yuna called out from her station. "Took us 40 years of trial and error, but we figured it out." Another pause, longer this time. Minho could almost feel the confusion radiating from the alien fleet. "You will remain stationary," the voice commanded. "A diplomatic vessel is approaching. Any attempt to activate your propulsion systems will be considered an act of hostility." The line went dead. Dae-hyun tensed at his station. "Captain, I don't like this. We're surrounded and outgunned." "Noted, Commander," Minho replied. "But we knew this could happen. Ji-young, start compiling a cultural package. Everything they need to know about Earth and humanity. I want to show them we're serious about peaceful contact." Over the next 3 hours, a single vessel detached from the alien fleet and approached the horizon. It was smaller than the others, shaped like a teardrop made of what appeared to be crystalline material. As it drew alongside, a beam of light connected the two ships. "They're requesting permission to board," Dae-hyun reported. "Granted. Have security meet them in docking bay 2. I'll greet them personally." Minho made his way to the docking bay with Ji-young at his side. Dr. Han Sung-min, their medical officer, joined them, carrying a portable scanning device. "Just in case," he explained. "We don't know what diseases or biological incompatibilities we might be dealing with." The airlock cycled open, and Minho got his first look at an alien being. She was tall, easily 2.5 meters, with a body covered in iridescent feathers that shifted between blue and green. Her face was avian with large golden eyes and a sharp beak. 2 pairs of arms extended from her torso, each ending in delicate 3-fingered hands. When she moved, she seemed to glide rather than walk. "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Avari Collective," she said, her beak not moving, but her voice emanating from somewhere in her throat. "I speak for the Galactic Concordat in this sector." Minho bowed slightly. "Captain Lee Minho, welcome aboard the Horizon. This is Dr. Park Ji-young, our chief scientist, and Dr. Han Sung-min, our medical officer." Velthara's golden eyes studied each of them in turn. "Humans, I have accessed your information packet. Your species is very young. You achieved radio transmission only 300 of your years ago. Yet you claim to have developed wormhole technology? Yes, Ji-young confirmed. We'd be happy to share our research. We believe in the free exchange of scientific knowledge. The ambassador's feathers rippled in what might have been surprise or concern. Your research. How many of your scientists worked on this project? The core team was about 200 people, Ji-young explained. But thousands contributed over the decades. And your species accomplished this without guidance from the Concordat? Without access to dimensional physics taught by the elder races? We didn't know there were elder races until today, Minho pointed out. We worked with what we had. Velthara was silent for a long moment. Captain Minho, I must be direct with you. What your species has done should be impossible. The Concordat has established scientific principles that govern faster-than-light travel. These principles are not theories. They are laws of reality proven over 3,000 cycles. You have apparently violated at least 12 of these laws. Sungmin spoke up, his tone curious rather than defensive. Perhaps your laws are incomplete. The ambassador's feathers stood on end, a clear sign of agitation. Young human, these laws were established by species who had mastered space travel before your ancestors learned to make fire. The mathematics are absolute. Mathematics is a tool we created to understand the universe, Ji-young said carefully. Sometimes the universe doesn't follow the rules we write down. We had to adjust our mathematics to match what we observed, not the other way around. Velthara stared at her for a long moment. Fascinating and terrifying. Come, Captain. I wish to see this impossible drive of yours. Minho led the delegation to engineering, where Yuna was running diagnostics on the wormhole drive. The massive device dominated the engineering bay, a sphere of exotic matter suspended in a magnetic containment field. Energy conduits fed into it from 12 different directions. Yuna looked up as they entered, wiping grease from her hands. Captain, we're reading some unusual energy signatures in the local space. I think our jump disturbed something. This is Ambassador Velthara, Minho introduced. She wants to understand our drive system. Yuna grinned. Sure thing. So the basic principle is that we create a bubble of space-time that exists outside normal space-time. By collapsing this bubble in a controlled manner, we can... You create the bubble without external reference points? Velthara interrupted. Yeah. We generate our own reference frame using quantum entanglement, and that would require violating causality itself. Yuna shrugged. We didn't violate it. We just bent it a little. The ambassador turned to Minho. Captain, I must report this to the High Council immediately. Your species represents something unprecedented in our recorded history. You have achieved the impossible through what appears to be sheer stubbornness and creative thinking. Is that a problem? Minho asked carefully. I do not know, Velthara admitted. In 3,000 cycles, the Concordat has encountered 147 spacefaring species. All of them developed technology along similar paths. All of them obeyed the fundamental laws we discovered. You humans appear to operate under different rules entirely. Ji-young stepped forward. Ambassador, we didn't mean to cause any trouble. We're explorers, scientists. We just want to learn and grow. If we violated your laws, it was through ignorance, not malice. I believe you, Velthara said, but belief may not be enough. The Council will need to decide what to do about humanity. Some will argue you are a danger that must be contained. Others will see you as an opportunity for learning. I suspect the debate will be intense. Minho felt a chill run down his spine. What exactly does contained mean? The ambassador's feathers drooped slightly. At best, quarantine. Your species would be forbidden from leaving your home system. At worst, she trailed off. At worst, Daehyun pressed, his hand unconsciously moving toward his sidearm. The Concordat has never encountered a species it could not understand or predict, Velthara said quietly. Unknown variables are considered threats to galactic stability. I will advocate for you, Captain Minho, but I cannot promise success. Your humanity's greatest strength may become its greatest liability. The meeting concluded with Velthara returning to her ship. As the alien vessel departed, Minho stood on the bridge, staring at the fleet that still surrounded them. What do we do, Captain? Ji-young asked. Minho smiled grimly. We do what humans have always done when told something is impossible. We prove them wrong. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Velthara left the horizon. 3 days of waiting while surrounded by 17 alien warships. Captain Minho had used the time well, keeping his crew busy with drills and preparations. But he could feel the tension building. Everyone knew their fate was being decided by beings they had never met. When the communication finally came, it was not Velthara's musical voice that filled the bridge. This voice was deeper, layered with harmonics that suggested multiple beings speaking in unison. Captain Minho of Earth. This is Science Chancellor Thrin of the Galactic Concordat. The High Council has reviewed your case. We have decided to allow you to demonstrate your technology under controlled conditions. If your claims are verified, we will discuss humanity's place in the galaxy. If they are not, you will be escorted back to your home system and forbidden from leaving it. Minho exchanged glances with Commander Daehyun and Dr. Ji-young. We accept these terms, Chancellor. What do you need us to demonstrate? Everything, Thrin replied. Your wormhole drive, your computational systems, your biological capabilities. We must understand how you achieved what you claim to have achieved. A research station is being moved into position. You will dock there in 6 hours. The line went dead. Yuna looked up from her engineering console with a worried expression. Captain, if they're bringing in their top scientists, they'll tear apart our drive. What if they decide our technology is too dangerous? Then we show them it's not, Minho said firmly. We prove we can be responsible with what we've created. Ji-young, I want you to prepare detailed presentations on our development process. Show them every failure, every setback, every safety protocol we developed. Yuna, make sure the drive is in perfect condition. I want them to see we know what we're doing. The research station was enormous, easily 50 times the size of the horizon. It appeared to be grown rather than built, its structure organic and flowing. Dozens of different vessels were docked at various ports, representing species from across the Concordat. As the horizon settled into its assigned berth, Minho could see figures moving through transparent sections of the station. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated. Some seemed to phase in and out of visibility. The delegation that met them was led by Science Chancellor Thrin himself. He was unlike anything Minho had imagined. Thrin appeared to be made entirely of crystal, his body geometric and faceted. Light refracted through him in dazzling patterns. He stood 3 meters tall with no obvious head or limbs, yet somehow moved with fluid grace. Captain Minho, Thrin's voice emanated from somewhere within his crystalline structure. I am accompanied by the finest scientific minds in the Concordat. We will begin our examination immediately. Beside Thrin stood a massive reptilian being with scales that shifted through various shades of red. Fleet Admiral Crix, he introduced himself with a growl. I am here to ensure this process remains secure. I am not convinced your species is trustworthy. Minho resisted the urge to bristle at the comment. We'll cooperate fully, Admiral. We have nothing to hide. The demonstrations began in the main laboratory, a vast space filled with equipment that hummed with unfamiliar energy. Yuna stood beside the wormhole drive's control interface, her hands moving confidently across the holographic displays. The key breakthrough, she explained to the assembled scientists, was realizing we didn't need external dimensional anchors. We create a self-contained quantum bubble using entangled particles. The bubble generates its own reference frame. A small floating creature covered in bioluminescent spots pulsed with light. Through the translation device, its voice came out high-pitched and incredulous. But the energy requirements for such a process would be astronomical. You would need to contain forces equivalent to a star's core. Yuna nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. That's why we use exotic matter to create negative energy density. We discovered how to synthesize it about 20 years ago. The assembled scientists erupted into what could only be described as chaos. Multiple voices speaking different languages overlapped as translation devices struggled to keep up. Thrin raised one of his crystalline appendages and silence fell. You synthesize exotic matter, stable exotic matter? His voice carried genuine shock. Well, stable for about 48 hours before it decays, Yuna admitted. That's why we have to manufacture it continuously during long voyages. It's a bit of a pain, honestly. Admiral Crick stepped forward, his tail lashing behind him. This is absurd. Exotic matter synthesis requires technology centuries beyond what this species should possess. I demand proof, Yuna smiled. Sure thing. I'll run a production cycle right now. For the next hour, she walked them through the process. The alien scientists watched in stunned silence as exotic matter materialized in the containment field. Its properties exactly as Yuna had described. She explained the mathematics casually as if discussing a simple recipe. Dr. Han Sung-min provided the next shock during the biological assessment. A medical team from the Concordat had been examining human physiology, and their findings were causing considerable debate. "Your cellular regeneration rates are unprecedented," declared a slug-like being who identified herself as Medical Director Oluvan. "Your species can heal from injuries that would be fatal to most Concordat members." "How?" Sung-min pulled up holographic displays of human cellular structures. "We have redundant systems throughout our bodies. If one organ fails, others can compensate. Our immune systems are highly aggressive, sometimes too aggressive. We evolved on a death world, you see." "Death world?" Felthara, who had joined the demonstration, sounded alarmed. "Earth," Ji-young interjected. "Our home planet has extreme environmental variations. Temperature swings of over 60 degrees Celsius between seasons in some regions. Massive storms. Tectonic activity. Multiple extinction events throughout our evolution. We had to become adaptable or die." Thrin's crystalline body pulsed with light. "Most species evolve on stable worlds. They specialize for specific environmental niches. You are saying humans are generalists by necessity?" "More than that," Sung-min continued. "Our brains are wired for rapid learning and adaptation. We can survive in almost any environment. We can eat an enormous variety of foods. We can function in extreme heat and cold. We're not the strongest or fastest or smartest species individually, but we're incredibly flexible." To demonstrate, Sung-min had the team perform various physical tests. The alien observers watched in amazement as humans adapted to challenges on the fly, solving problems with creative approaches rather than specialized biology. But the real shock came when Ji-young demonstrated human learning capabilities. The Concordat team presented her with 3 complex alien languages and asked her to learn basic communication. 48 hours later, she was holding conversations in all 3. "Impossible," declared a mantis-like scholar named Tekril. "Language acquisition requires neural pathways developed over years of exposure. You learned in 2 days what should take 2 years." Ji-young shrugged. "I'm good with languages. Some humans can learn even faster. Our brains are really adaptable. We form new neural connections throughout our lives. Most species can only form new neural pathways during developmental stages." Tekril protested. "Adult learning is limited by fixed brain structures." "Not for us," Ji-young said. "We learn until we die. It's how we survived long enough to build civilizations." The tactical demonstrations provided by Commander Daehyun were equally unsettling to the Concordat observers. Admiral Crix had insisted on running humans through standard combat simulations, scenarios designed to test strategic thinking. The first 3 scenarios were considered unwinnable. They were used to evaluate how species handled certain defeat. Daehyun won all 3. Crix's scales flushed deep crimson with anger. "How?" "These scenarios have been tested on every Concordat species. No one has ever won." Daehyun studied the tactical display calmly. "You programmed them to be unwinnable based on conventional strategy. So I used unconventional strategy. In the first scenario, I sacrificed my command ship to create a debris field that disrupted your sensor network. In the second, I retreated until you overextended, then struck at your supply lines. In the third, I waited until your forces were committed, then changed the victory conditions by hacking your command codes." "You cheated," Crix growled. "I adapted," Daehyun corrected. "In real combat, there's no such thing as cheating. There's winning and losing. You presented me with a problem. I solved it." Velthara watched the exchange with her golden eyes gleaming. "This is what I tried to explain to the Council. Humans don't accept limitations. They see every rule as a suggestion, every boundary as a challenge." Over the next week, the demonstrations continued. Yuna showed them how humans had developed quantum computing by approaching the problem from an entirely different angle than the Concordat. Sung-min demonstrated human psychological resilience by volunteering for stress tests that would break most species. Ji-young created art, music, and literature that confused and fascinated the alien observers in equal measure. Through it all, Thrin observed silently, his crystalline form pulsing with light as he processed everything he witnessed. Finally, on the 8th day, he called a meeting. "Captain Minho," the Science Chancellor's voice was thoughtful. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Concordat was unlike anything Captain Minho had ever imagined. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its walls shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the amphitheater-style seating, their attention focused on the central platform where Minho stood with his crew. 3 months had passed since the demonstrations. 3 months of waiting, of diplomatic meetings, of endless questions. Now, finally, humanity's fate would be decided. High Arbiter Quendor presided over the proceedings from an elevated platform. She was insectoid, her chitinous body gleaming under the strange light of the chamber. 4 multifaceted eyes studied the humans with an expression impossible to read. This tribunal is convened to determine the status of the species identified as humanity within the Galactic Concordate. Quendor's voice clicked and chittered, translated into English by the device each human wore. Captain Lee Minho, you and your crew stand accused of 17 violations of dimensional law, operation of prohibited technology, and presenting a biological impossibility that threatens the stability of established scientific understanding. Minho stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. High Arbiter, we acknowledge that we arrived in concordate space without knowledge of your laws. But we cannot apologize for surviving, for learning, for growing. These are not crimes on Earth. They are virtues. A ripple of reaction spread through the assembled observers. Admiral Crix rose from his seat in the prosecution section. Virtues? You call reckless endangerment of dimensional stability a virtue? Your wormhole technology could tear holes in reality itself. Dr. Choi Yuna stood beside Minho, her face flushed with anger. Our technology is stable. We've run thousands of tests. Yes, early experiments failed, sometimes catastrophically. That's how learning works. You try, you fail, you improve. Failure is not acceptable when dealing with forces that can destroy solar systems. Crix shot back. Science Chancellor Thrin rose from the council's section. His crystalline body caught the light, scattering rainbows across the chamber. Admiral Crix raises a valid concern. However, we must consider the evidence. Humanity's wormhole technology has been operational for nearly 50 years, without catastrophic failure. Their safety record, while imperfect, is within acceptable parameters for experimental technology. Dr. Park Ji-young activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. We'd like to present our complete development history. Every test, every failure, every life lost in the pursuit of space travel. We don't hide our mistakes. We learn from them. For 3 hours, she walked the tribunal through humanity's space program. The early disasters, the near misses, the slow, painful progress from chemical rockets to fusion drives to the wormhole system. She showed them the memorials Earth had built for those who died pushing the boundaries of the possible. By the end, even some of the prosecution's supporters looked thoughtful. But it was a being in the far corner of the chamber who spoke next, and her voice silenced everyone. Elder Synthera was ancient beyond measure. She appeared to be made of pure energy, her form shifting and flowing within a containment field. According to the briefing documents, she was over 8,000 years old, the oldest living being in the Concordate. I have listened to these proceedings with great interest. Her voice was like wind chimes, soft but impossible to ignore. I have heard the prosecution claim that humanity is dangerous. I have heard the defense claim that humanity is merely different. But I have a question for Captain Minho. Minho turned to face her, feeling the weight of millennia in her gaze. Yes, Elder? Why do your people refuse to accept limitations? The question hung in the air. Minho thought carefully before responding. Because limitations are how species die, Elder. Not physical death, but the death of growth, of wonder, of possibility. We've seen it in our own history. Civilizations that became comfortable, that stopped questioning, that accepted the status quo. They stagnated and collapsed. We refuse to let that happen to us. Synthera pulsed with light. And yet the Concordate has survived for 3,000 cycles by respecting natural limitations. Has it? Agent Kim Hyejin spoke up for the first time. She had arrived 2 weeks ago on a stealth ship, part of Earth's intelligence service. With respect, Elder, your Concordate is dying. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Admiral Crix's scales flushed crimson. How dare you? It's true. Hyejin continued, unintimidated. We've studied your records, your culture, your technology. Do you know what we found? You haven't made a significant scientific breakthrough in 800 years. Your birth rates are declining across most member species. Your exploration programs have been reduced to almost nothing. You're maintaining what you have, not building toward what could be. Quendor's mandibles clicked sharply. These are internal matters not relevant to— They're completely relevant, Professor Yoon Tae-jun interrupted. The quantum physicist had been brought in specifically for this hearing. You asked why we refuse to accept limitations. This is why. Because acceptance of limitation is the first step toward extinction. Yes, we take risks. Yes, we fail. But we also grow, evolve, improve. When was the last time the Concordat did that? The chamber erupted in chaos. Species shouted in dozens of languages. Translation devices struggled to keep up. Quendor had to strike her resonance gong 3 times before order was restored. This tribunal is not about the Concordat's internal policies, she stated firmly. It is about whether humanity can be safely integrated into galactic civilization. Synthera's energy form pulsed again. No, High Arbiter. The humans are correct. This tribunal is about both. We cannot judge them without examining ourselves. She turned her attention back to Minho. Captain, I have a proposition. There is a puzzle ancient beyond measure. It has remained unsolved for 5,000 years. Every species in the Concordat has attempted it. All have failed. If your crew can solve it, I will advocate for your full membership. If you cannot, you will accept quarantine within your home system. Minho looked at his crew. Jiyoung nodded confidently. Yuna gave him a thumbs up. Commander Daehyun simply smiled. We accept. The puzzle was presented on a massive holographic display. It appeared to be a 3-dimensional matrix of symbols, constantly shifting and rearranging. According to the documentation, it was a message left by an ancient race called the Precursors, the first spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. The puzzle requires understanding of 12-dimensional mathematics, quantum linguistics, and temporal mechanics, Thrin explained. The finest minds in the Concordat have spent centuries attempting to decode it. The human team huddled together, studying the display. Dr. Han Sung-min, who had proven surprisingly adept at pattern recognition, frowned at the symbols. This isn't a puzzle, excuse me. Thrin's crystalline form flickered. It's not a puzzle, Sung-min repeated. Or rather, it's not the kind of puzzle you think it is. Everyone's been trying to solve it forwards, right? Treating it like a mathematical equation that needs to be balanced. That is the standard approach to all precursor artifacts, Velthera confirmed. She had been observing the proceedings quietly, her feathers reflecting her anxiety. Jiyoung's eyes suddenly widened. Oh, that's clever. They're testing for lateral thinking. The puzzle isn't meant to be solved forwards. It's meant to be understood backwards. She and Sung-min began working together, with Yuna handling the computational aspects and Tae-jun providing the quantum mathematics. They ignored the symbols everyone else had focused on for millennia. Instead, they looked at the empty spaces between the symbols, at the pattern of changes rather than the changes themselves. 6 hours later, Jiyoung turned to Elder Synthara with a tired smile. It's not a message. It's a test. The precursors wanted to see if anyone would stop trying to solve it their way and start thinking differently. The answer is that there is no answer. The puzzle itself is the message. Stop looking for solutions we left you. Create your own. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Then slowly, Synthara began to pulse with light, brighter and brighter until she was almost too brilliant to look at. 8,000 years. Her voice carried a note of wonder. 8,000 years I have existed, and I never thought to question the question itself. The humans are correct. The precursors were not leaving us a treasure to find. They were warning us not to follow them too closely. Admiral Crick stood slowly, his earlier hostility replaced by something like respect. They solved it. By not solving it, they thought differently. Thrin agreed, his voice carrying a strange quality, just as they have done with everything else. Their technology, their biology, their strategy, all of it approaches problems from angles we never considered. General Bei Jiwan chose that moment to make her entrance. She strode into the chamber with 12 more human ships' worth of crew behind her, all in full dress uniform. Sorry we're late. Had some trouble with the wormhole calculations, but I heard humanity needed a character reference. Minho wanted to protest the dramatic timing but had to admit it was effective. The assembled Concordat members stared at the new arrivals, confronted with the reality that humanity had not sent just one ship, but many. How many vessels does Earth possess? The celebration of humanity's acceptance into the Concordat lasted exactly 6 hours before everything changed. Captain Minho was in the middle of a diplomatic dinner with Ambassador Velthara and several other council members when the alarms began. They weren't the standard emergency tones he'd learned during his time with the Concordat. These were different, primal, carrying a note of terror that transcended species. Science Chancellor Thrin materialized in the dining hall, his crystalline form pulsing with erratic light. All vessels to battle stations. We are under attack. The view screens throughout the station activated, showing the outer edge of Concordat space. What Minho saw made his blood run cold. Ships were emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. Dozens of them, each larger than anything in the Concordat fleet. They were dark, almost black, with surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Who are they? Minho demanded, already moving toward the exit. The Voidborn. Velthara's voice carried genuine fear. They come from beyond our galaxy. They have consumed 7 others before turning their attention to us. We thought we had more time. Minho ran toward the Horizon's docking port, his crew already mobilizing. Behind him, he could hear Thrin organizing the Concordat defense. But there was something in the Chancellor's tone that Minho didn't like. It sounded like resignation. On the Horizon's bridge, Commander Daehyun had tactical displays up and running. The situation looked grim. The Voidborn fleet numbered at least 80 vessels against the Concordat's 37 in this sector. Captain, we're receiving orders to stay docked, Daehyun reported. Admiral Crick says human vessels are too valuable to risk until we know what we're facing. Minho watched as the first engagement began. Concordat warships opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into a weapon. Dimensional artillery that could theoretically destroy entire planets. The Voidborn ships barely noticed. Their shields, Dr. Yuna gasped from her engineering station. They're using dimensional phasing. They're not blocking the attacks. They're existing slightly outside normal space. Can we target them? Minho asked. Not with conventional weapons. The Concordat's entire arsenal is built around dimensional technology. Against an enemy that operates outside normal dimensions, she trailed off. On screen, 3 Concordat vessels were torn apart by black energy beams. The Voidborn were advancing methodically, destroying everything in their path. General Bei Jiwan's face appeared on the communication screen. Minho, are you seeing this? We need to help them. Crix ordered us to stand down. Since when do we follow orders that get people killed? Jiwan's expression was grim. I've got 8 ships ready to launch. Your call, Captain. Minho looked at his crew. Yuna was already running calculations. Daehyun was plotting attack vectors. Dr. Ji-young was analyzing the Voidborn ship signatures. Even Dr. Sungmin was preparing medical facilities for casualties. They all knew what he was going to say. Launch, Minho ordered. All human vessels engage the enemy. Someone get me Admiral Crix. He's not going to like this, but he's going to have to deal with it. The Horizon broke from its moorings along with 8 other human ships. They were tiny compared to the Voidborn dreadnoughts, insects challenging dragons, but they had one advantage the Concordat didn't have. Yuna, you said the Voidborn are using dimensional phasing? Minho asked as they accelerated toward the battle. Yes, sir. They're shifting their mass slightly out of sync with our reality. And our wormhole drive operates by creating its own dimensional reference frame, right? Yuna's eyes widened. Oh, that's brilliant and insane. If we generate a wormhole field around our weapons, we might be able to match their phase signature. Make it work. We've got about 3 minutes before we're in range. Admiral Crix's furious face appeared on screen. Captain Minho, I ordered you to remain docked. You are violating direct... We're not part of your chain of command, Admiral. Minho interrupted. We're allies helping allies. Now you can court-martial me later. Or let us save some of your people. Your choice. Crix's scales flushed several colors before settling on an angry orange. If you get yourself killed, I will personally tell your leaders that you died stupidly. Noted. Minho out. The human ships entered weapons range. Yuna had managed to create a modified wormhole field that surrounded their missile payloads. It was untested, unstable, and absolutely insane. Perfect. All ships fire, Minho commanded. 20 missiles streaked toward the nearest Voidborn dreadnought, each wrapped in its own tiny wormhole bubble. The Voidborn's dimensional shields activated, phasing them out of sync with normal space, but the human missiles phased with them, existing in the same dimensional pocket. The explosions were beautiful and terrible. The Voidborn ship shuddered, its dark hull cracking. It wasn't destroyed, but it was hurt. For the first time since the battle began, The enemy had been touched. The Voidborn fleet immediately shifted focus. 15 vessels turned their weapons toward the human ships. Evasive maneuvers, Dahyun called out. All ships, scatter pattern Delta. The human vessels broke formation, each captain flying with a recklessness that would have horrified Concordat fleet doctrine. They jinked and rolled, using their smaller size and more maneuverable drives to avoid the devastating black energy beams. Captain Shin Minji's voice came over the fleet channel, tight with concentration. Lead ship, this is Defiance. I'm going to try something crazy. Define crazy, Minho responded, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. I'm going to ram that wounded dreadnought. Right before impact, I'll activate our wormhole drive and phase us both into unstable space. It'll tear us both apart, but it'll take that monster with me. Negative, Defiance. We'll find another. There is no other way, sir. That ship is moving toward the civilian station. If it fires on that target, millions die. Maybe billions across multiple species. I've got 63 crew aboard. The math is simple. Minho felt rage and helplessness war within him. He wanted to order her to stand down, to find a different solution. But he knew she was right. Understood, Captain Shin. Good hunting. The Defiance broke from formation, accelerating toward the damaged Voidborn dreadnought at maximum speed. The enemy ship fired, but Minji's piloting was inspired, dodging death by meters. Her vessel was taking damage, hull plating melting under near misses, but she kept going. At the last moment before impact, the Defiance's wormhole drive activated. The dreadnought and the human ship both vanished into a bubble of twisted spacetime. Then the bubble collapsed and both vessels tore themselves apart in a silent explosion of light and debris. The human fleet channel was silent for a heartbeat. Then Jiwon's voice cut through, sharp and determined. All ships make their sacrifice count. Target the next dreadnought. Show these things what happens when you threaten innocent people. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked both the Concordat and the Voidborn. They didn't have the Concordat's superior weapons or shields. They didn't have the Voidborn's dimensional phasing or overwhelming firepower. What they had was adaptability and a complete refusal to give up. When weapons failed, they rammed. When shields collapsed, they kept fighting. When outnumbered, they used tactics that made no sense by conventional warfare standards. Dr. Lim Junho, an astrophysicist aboard one of the support vessels, made a critical discovery during the chaos. Captain Minho, I've been analyzing the Voidborn's dimensional technology. Their shields work by creating a phase differential with normal space, but our wormhole drives generate quantum interference. If we could coordinate our drives, create a resonance wave, we could disrupt their shields across the entire fleet. Yuna finished, already running calculations. But it would require perfect timing from all remaining ships. And we'd be vulnerable while we're generating the field. How vulnerable? Minho asked. Completely defenseless for 30 seconds. Maybe 40? Do it. Concordat fleet, this is Captain Minho. We're going to drop the enemy's shields, but we need you to cover us while we set it up. Can you hold for 40 seconds? There was a pause before Admiral Crix responded. Captain, your species continues to amaze and terrify me. Yes, we can hold. All Concordat vessels form defensive perimeter around human ships. They're about to do something impossible again. The remaining 7 human ships moved into a spherical formation. Their wormhole drives activated in sequence, creating an interlocking field of quantum interference. The effect spread outward like ripples on a pond, touching each Voidborn vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the dark shields flickered and failed. The Voidborn ships were suddenly vulnerable. All vessels fire at will, Crix commanded. The Concordat fleet unleashed everything they had: dimensional artillery, quantum torpedoes, energy weapons that tore at the fabric of space itself. The Voidborn ships, suddenly exposed, began to die, but the human ships were completely defenseless. A Voidborn cruiser, one of the few still operational, targeted the horizon directly. The black energy beam lanced out, moving too fast to dodge. Then Ambassador Osora's transport ship, a civilian vessel never meant for combat, threw itself in front of the blast. The beam tore through it like paper. Sora, Ji-young screamed. Worth it, came the ambassador's fading voice. 6 months after the Voidborn attack, Captain Lee Minho stood in what had once been the grand chamber of the Galactic Concordat. It had been completely redesigned. The rigid, formal structure was gone, replaced by a more open layout that encouraged collaboration rather than hierarchy. It was a small change, but symbolic of everything that had shifted. He was no longer just Captain Minho. He was Counselor Minho now, the first human to sit on the Supreme Council. The title felt strange, heavy with responsibility, but he wore it because his species needed a voice at the highest levels of galactic government. "Counselor Minho, your attention, please," High Arbiter Quendor called. The insectoid leader had changed too. She seemed less rigid now, more willing to consider unconventional approaches. "We are reviewing the Integration Progress Report." Dr. Park Ji-young stepped forward to present. She had been appointed director of the new Interspecies Academy, a position she'd accepted with characteristic enthusiasm. The academy now has over 3,000 students from 42 different species. We're teaching human approaches to problem-solving, creative thinking, and what we call failure-based learning. A holographic display showed classrooms where alien students worked alongside human instructors. In one room, a crystalline being was attempting to create art, something their logical species had never valued. In another, a group of insectoid scholars were engaged in what humans called brainstorming, throwing out wild ideas without judgment. "The results have been remarkable," Ji-young continued. "Species that haven't produced new scientific theories in centuries are now generating innovative research. We've had 17 breakthrough discoveries in fields the Concordat considered exhausted." Science Chancellor Thrin pulsed with light from his position on the council. "I must admit I was skeptical of human teaching methods, but I cannot argue with results. My own research team has adopted these brainstorming sessions. Last week we solved a quantum mechanics problem that had puzzled us for 200 years. The solution came from my youngest assistant, who suggested we stop trying to solve it correctly and instead solve it incorrectly to see what happened." Scattered sounds that might have been laughter came from various council members. The Concordat was learning to appreciate absurdity, something humans had known the value of for millennia. Ambassador Park Nari rose from her seat. She had replaced Minho as Earth's primary diplomatic representative, freeing him to focus on council duties. "I'd like to address the technology exchange programs. Chief Engineer Choi Yuna has established joint research facilities in 17 systems. Human and Concordat scientists are working together to create hybrid technologies." Yuna appeared via holographic projection from one of those facilities. Behind her, Minho could see dozens of beings working on a massive device that seemed to blend human and alien engineering principles. "We've completed the first of the new wormhole network stations," Yuna reported, barely containing her excitement. "It combines human spontaneous wormhole generation with Concordat dimensional stabilization. The result is faster, safer, and more efficient than either technology alone. We can now create stable wormholes between any 2 points in explored space almost instantly." "How stable?" asked a council member, a floating jellyfish-like being whose species specialized in careful, methodical research. "We've run it continuously for 60 days without fluctuation," Yuna replied. "Your safety protocols and our aggressive innovation work together perfectly." Admiral Crick stood, his scales now a calm blue-green. The Admiral had become one of humanity's strongest advocates after the battle. "The military applications are equally impressive. We've trained 15 mixed-species tactical units using human adaptive warfare principles. Their performance in simulations exceeds our best traditional units by 40%. Commander Kwon Dae-hyun, who had been promoted to general and was now training those units, added his report. "The key is teaching Concordat soldiers to stop following the plan when the plan stops working. Most alien species are bred or trained for specific roles. Humans are generalists. We're teaching everyone to be more flexible, to think on their feet." "Some of our warriors find this difficult," Crix admitted. "They are uncomfortable with the lack of clear protocols. But they cannot argue with the results." The council moved through various reports, each showing progress in different areas. Dr. Han Sung-min presented research on using human genetic adaptability to help other species overcome evolutionary plateaus. Several Concordat races facing declining birth rates were seeing improvements after incorporating human-developed medical treatments. But it was Elder Synthera who raised the most profound point, the ancient energy being pulsed thoughtfully before speaking. "In my 8,000 years of existence, I have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. I have seen species reach their peak and then slowly decline. The Concordat itself was in such a decline before humanity arrived. We had become comfortable. We stopped questioning. We stopped growing. She moved to the center of the chamber, her light filling the space. What humanity has brought us is not just technology or tactics. It is a reminder of something we had forgotten. Life is not about achieving perfection and maintaining it. Life is about constant growth, constant change, constant challenge. Every species in this chamber has been touched by human influence in these 6 months. Some of you were resistant. Some of you were afraid. But all of you are different now. Ambassador Velthara stood, her iridescent feathers shimmering. Elder Synthara speaks truth. My own people, the Avari, have not produced new art forms in 500 years. We believed we had perfected our artistic expressions. Then humans showed us their art, chaotic and emotional and raw. It inspired young Avari artists to experiment again. Now we have an entire movement of new creators and our culture is richer for it. The same is true in science, Thrin added. We had established laws we believed were absolute. Humans showed us that laws are descriptions of what we observe, not prescriptions for what is possible. This shift in thinking has opened entire new fields of research. Agent Kim Heejin, who had been instrumental in intelligence sharing between Earth and the Concordat, presented the latest discovery. We've been analyzing long-range sensor data from unexplored regions. We found evidence of at least 7 other species that the Concordat classified as impossible and ignored. Species that evolved in ways that violated your understanding of biology. Species with technology that shouldn't work according to your physics. What are you suggesting? Quendor asked. That humanity isn't unique, Hyejin replied. We're just the first impossible species you couldn't ignore. There are others out there. Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds. Species that broke the rules you wrote down and survived anyway. The implications rippled through the council. Professor Yoon Taejun, the quantum physicist, stood to elaborate. The Concordat spent 3,000 years creating a framework to understand the universe. That framework was elegant, logical, and nearly complete. But it was also limiting. By defining what was possible, you automatically limited yourselves to thinking within those boundaries. Humans never had those boundaries, so we never felt confined by them. So what do we do now? Asked a council member, genuine curiosity in their mechanical voice. Minho stood. We explore. We question. We grow. The Voidborn will return, probably stronger than before. We need to be ready. But more than that, we need to be better. Not just militarily, but as a civilization. The Concordat was built on the idea of maintaining peace and stability. That's good. But you forgot that peace and stability can become stagnation if you're not careful. He activated a display showing a map of the galaxy. I propose the Great Expedition. 50 mixed-species vessels, each crewed by humans and Concordat members, venturing into unexplored space. We'll seek out new species, new technologies, new ideas. We'll find those impossible civilizations and learn from them. We'll push the boundaries of what we know until we find new boundaries, and then we'll push those too. That seems reckless, a cautious council member observed. It is reckless, Minho agreed with a smile. That's the point. Calculated risks, but risks nonetheless. Because that's how you grow. That's how you survive. That's how you thrive. Chancellor Kiravel, a being of indeterminate species who had recently joined the council, stood in support. I vote in favor. My people were discovered by this expedition idea. We lived in a region the Concordat deemed too dangerous to explore. We survived there by adapting, by innovating, by refusing to die. When human scouts found us, they didn't see us as a curiosity or a threat. They saw us as potential friends and allies. That is the spirit we need. The vote was called. It wasn't unanimous, some members still nervous about the risks. But the majority supported the proposal. The Great Expedition would proceed. Over the next weeks, preparations consumed everyone's attention. Captain An Minseok was chosen to lead the expedition. He had been part of the second wave of human ships to arrive in Concordat space, known for his diplomatic skills and his ability to remain calm in impossible situations. The day of the launch arrived. 50 vessels, representing the best of both human and Concordat engineering, sat ready in orbital formation around the capital world.